Hi, I'm Becca with Dorman Products, here to talk to you today about our window regulators. The window regulator lives inside the vehicle doors, and it's the part that changes the rotational motion of the window lift motor into the linear movement of the window up and down. This is a part of the car that doesn't really have many other names or slang associated with it. Normally, most mechanics and walk-in customers will shorten the name down to window reg. And even a rookie on the counter should be able to figure that out, right? Some may also just ask for a window motor, not knowing how to diagnose what's wrong with their window, which we'll touch on in a moment. Though vehicles without power windows are not as common as they once were, vehicles with crank-style windows also use regulators, which may not be the same as power window regulator on a given vehicle application. So one of the first things you'll want to ask your customer is if the vehicle has power windows. Increasingly, they are standard equipment, but you'll find manual windows on older vehicles and vehicles that are used in fleet applications, like trucks from light duty right on up to HD. The next thing to ask, of course, is the position. Unsurprisingly, left front regulators are the ones you'll sell most frequently, but savage children, smoking passengers, collisions, and normal wear and tear can all take their toll on the rest of the window regs. Remember when I said some folks might just ask for a motor? You might also ask what's wrong with the window itself. A window that's going up and down crooked or banging into place is likely to be a bum regulator. But if the window won't move at all, the fuse, switch, and motor should all be checked as well to make sure this is not a mechanical problem, not an electrical one. We've got motors, which I'll tell you a bit more about shortly. And we also have switches and connectors if that turns out to be the issue at hand. With that in mind, helping your customer narrow down the problem will save you both headaches. You should be aware that regs come in a few different styles. On older vehicles, scissor regulators are seen almost exclusively. They're normally very hardy items. Their malfunction comes from the lubricant drying, which is related to two other problems doors suffer: water ingress and dirt accumulation, which often happens due to compromised doorbell molding seals. The other common type of regulator you'll see is prevalent on newer vehicles, and that's the cable reg. Cable regs allow for more compact mounting, which is important as doors have filled up with stuff. Modern vehicles have smart switches with onboard processing, side impact airbags, speakers, and other comfort and safety items that just take up real estate in the doors. Some cable regs are single cable and others use two. Cable regs often fail from cables that have stretched or worn, and the steel cables that can cut into or crack the rails they travel on, which are commonly made of plastic. Dirt and dust mix with lubricant, eventually clogging outer cable housings. Some vehicles use a variation of one of these two types mounted to the plate or panel, which affects the mounting, but not the efficacy or the principle of operation. When you're selling a reg, I humbly submit that Dorman is almost the only game in town. Sure, there are other suppliers, but no one can even touch our coverage, testing, or OE upgrades. We apply some of our exclusive OE fix upgrades to many regulators like lengthened and thickened cable slide block and cable sheathing for cables that were previously exposed to dirt and moisture. We also use cable tension guides to keep the cables from coming off their tracks. And in that same vein, we often will implement deeper cable channels in the reel to make it harder for the cable to pop out. We have a window regulator lab with over 2,000 doors on site here in America, plus a few other things that are nice to have too. If your customer is working on a power window, you'll probably want to start by offering them a window motor and regulator assembly. Here you'll get a fresh regulator, but also a brand new motor. This can be a selling point to a customer if your window motor supplier is providing you with remanufactured units. Barring that, we also sell new motors individually. I'm not suggesting every reg replacement needs a motor, but it's a bit of a pain to get into that door panel. So at that point, many customers will elect to just freshen up the motor too. Occasionally, a slipping window will be diagnosed as having a bad regulator, but that's not the issue. The problem might be mechanical, but it's the window motor gear rather than the reg. In that case, we also sell lift motor gear kits to restore proper operation of the door. And of course, let's not leave those with crank windows out in the cold either. Often, excessive torque placed on the window cranks is the reason regs get replaced. A customer may have stripped or broken either the crank, the reg, or both, and realized the regulator needed to be replaced. Well, that window crank may be either broken or just tired. A fresh crank will feel like the bee's knees on that new reg, and we've got them. There's one more thing I'm going to mention, just because it's a very similar part and you may be asked for it from time to time, and that's the minivan sliding door motor and reel assembly. Many rear doors on a minivan use a very similar system to open and close the doors. The units look a lot like a dual cable window regulator with a motor. Dorman sells repair cables and kits to get those working too. Now, installing these isn't too tricky of a job. The first one someone attempts is a bit of a bear, but they get easier after a few attempts. So some of your walk-in customers will even be proficient at reg repair. The door panel needs to be pulled from the door. Be careful to disconnect the wires for things like courtesy lights, switches, and speakers. If your customer has crank windows, there's a special tool they'll need to remove the window handle before the door panel, also called the door card, can come off. Once the panel is off, removal of the motor might be needed too. Some cars are a real treat and have a whole inner panel that can be exposed to get better working access. But even the ones that don't usually have a fairly large access hole in which to insert the mechanisms. Unsurprisingly, maneuvering the cable-style regs in tight quarters is a bit easier. One thing you may want to make your customer aware of is that the motors are frequently held in place with rivets, which need to be drilled out for removal. You'll also want to let them know that in most cases, those can be swapped for simple nuts and bolts, which many customers will happily buy. If someone is interested in a rivet tool, well, we've got those too. After getting the new reg mounted and motor installed, it's prudent to test the function of the reg and motor by hooking up the switch and confirming operation. In some cases, smart window motors may need to go through a learning sequence, but if you've sold a Dorman unit equipped with a smart motor, they know it's a very simple process. A child could easily do it. Just in case though, we have a quick video on how to perform the procedure. After that, one buttons the door back up and puts the door card back in place, and the job is finished. And remember, if you need any help before, during, or after the sale, our Dorman technical support team is ready and willing. You can call them at 866-933-2911. Thanks for taking a little time to brush up on window regulators. We hope it helps you and your customers. I'm Becca, and I'll see you soon.